This is A Voice, a podcast with Dr. Gillyanne Kayes and Jeremy Fisher.
This is A Voice.
Hello and welcome to This is A Voice, Season 11, Episode 8.
The podcast where we get vocal about voice.
I'm Jeremy Fisher.
And I'm Dr. Gillyanne Kayes.
And we have to tell you that we've been making mistakes galore in this introduction. So welcome, Michael Cripps. Tell us who you are.
Oh, good morning, everyone. Hello. I am Michael Cripps, Kevin Michael, or KMC sometimes. My job is head of singing at Guildford School of Acting, and I'm here to talk about all kinds of information about what it is to teach in drama schools. My background is actually, Jeremy, it's a little bit similar to yours. I think.
Yeah.
Started as a musician, then discovered that maybe my original passion for wanting to be a concert pianist was foolish.
Yeah, 100%.
And chose to do the other.
Absolutely with you on that.
Yeah, and then chose to do the other foolish thing of becoming an actor. And, I had the skills as a musician and the skills as an actor. I sort of myself working as a music director as well. And I'm sure your listeners can tell that my accent is a bit different than your accent. My professional life, in terms of being a performer, in terms of being a music director, and actually my earlier teaching here as well, is from Canada. I'm originally from Vancouver, which is out in the West Coast. Beautiful part of the country.
Yes.
So, well, thank you for having me today. What a pleasure. I feel like we are having tea and going to have a nice little nerdy chat about all the things that we love.
Absolutely.
Very much. And what we appreciate is that you've taken time to come in today because as we're doing a little mini series about the professional performer, nurturing the professional performer, specifically in the musical theatre environment. And it's going to be wonderful to talk with you about how you do that and how you grow that individual within the educational space. Because I should say for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with Guildford School of Acting, aka GSA, it is one of our premier training institutions in the UK for actors and musical theatre performers. If I've left anybody out, you have actor musicians as well, I think.
Actor musicians as well, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a wonderful institution, and I say I'm extremely privileged to hold the position that I have. And I think when I say privileged, I mean, not only do I get to work with some pretty wonderful colleagues that bring so much experience to the work, but also that I get to work with incredible students that have so much potential for their future careers and their future lives. And we're talking about what it is to teach in the drama conservatoire environment. And I think in talking about privilege, I think it's important that, acknowledge the fact that on the first day of classes, it's not us going, wow, these students are so lucky to work with us, that it's us going, oh my goodness, how lucky are we that they're trusting us with their hopes, their dreams, their challenges, more importantly, the journey that they're about to go on, and playing a tiny little role in that. I think that's a gift in my life, and I'm incredibly grateful for that.
I want to jump in straight away with what could be a tricky question, because I'm like that. I was thinking in institutions you have a very careful balance between individuality and group necessity.
Oh, let's go there right away.
Yes. Oh, I love this. We're peeling the bandage right off. I love that. And actually, what I really enjoyed about your previous cast of this series is there's been lots of conversation, hasn't there, about individuality and what that looks like and what that means in the industry. But certainly here in this environment, too, as teachers and learners. And just to be clear, to say that I'm in a position where I can speak about the GSA experience and only the GSA experience at this point, not the experience of other schools. Although I may find myself being a bit of a hypocrite and making sweeping statements and all that kind of stuff. But I think we pride ourselves at Guildford School of Acting, the fact that we want to encourage our students to be individual. And when we're looking at what that means to be individual, we want the students to be their own selves. We want them to be true to themselves, because we recognize that education is not a one-size-fits-all there, but certainly our industry is not a cookie-cutter industry, as in good would it be if I turned out 25 students every year that look the same, move the same, sound the same. That's not going to be beneficial for them, and it's not going to be beneficial for this thing that we call the industry. The challenge, though, is working with these students where we are working in a way that encourages them to embrace their individuality, but also to keep a mind on what are the trends? What does the industry ask of us? What do we, it's a big one, what do we think the industry is asking? And how do we connect with them to find out that we are either right or wrong? Yeah. And there's quite a few obstacles, which I think we'll probably get into today within this conversation, because I think this is sort of tin potatoes of what it is that we do as teachers. But definitely, I think be doing a massive disservice to our students if we were saying, good, march to the beat of one drum and only one drum. It's not really going to do them any good as they progress into the world.
There's a very interesting thing about the musical theatre industry in general, and I am also, by the way, assuming that you can also train them outside of the musical theatre specific industry, so there are many more opportunities.
The idea of
Transferable skills.
building their own
absolutely.
businesses, etc.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but this transferable skills is a massive thing. I think we've moved to we live in a wonderful time, don't we, where we have so much information and recognize that there's so much opportunity that studying at a musical theatre program now isn't just about singing and acting and dancing. It's the recognition that you can also go and work in film and television, and you can do commercial work, and you can do voiceover work for audiobooks and video games and heck knows what else, that there is so much more to what it is that these students are learning to do than just show tunes.
Yes.
That's incredibly important to that whole experience, but also to their future careers.
So I'm going to prod you about what does individuality mean to you?
Cool.
Yes, so here we are, team, friends. we are voice people. There's been a lot of conversation within the voice world, in particular in the last few years, but again, certainly we've heard it within your previous podcast missions, where talking a lot about the individual as in who they are when we're looking at everything from their mental health to how they learn to any sort of aspect of EDI, of course. Actually, in this, we're also looking at what structures we're dealing with. And I'm talking about vocal structures. We're dealing with not only the mental mind, but we're working with physical structures, the genetic structures. And the conversation that comes out of this is, should we be training students to go into an industry where we think they are needed to do something or needed to sound a certain way? Or should we actually be working with students to go, let's work with your individual structure and look at what your structure is capable of doing and what your relationship is with that structure and what you yourself are capable of doing. And I think personally, I think that's the way forward. And I think that's the start of it. I think there's more to it than that.
I love that.
But in terms of, say, encouraging the students or giving the students agency in the use of their instrument, we need to make sure that we are equipping them with the tools to work in a way that is appropriate for themselves before working for other expectations.
So they need that sense of a growth mindset for themselves, which you need to encourage, because this challenge that we have over the individuality, not only vocal, but personality, neuro-processing, gender expression, and ethnicity, and all of those aspects are super important. So not only that, as an institution, but the performer expectations themselves. And I'm just wondering how much you come across this as an obstacle. It's, I want to go into that industry. I see myself as this. And actually what's coming out, let's talk about something like voice categorization, voice type.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're discovering that their individual voice isn't that tenor who can sing waving through a window with ease, as an example. And then they have to learn to embrace this self that they have and all of their strengths. How do you manage that within the training framework?
Yeah. I have to say, you said, how often do you come across this? I would say that is a bulk of our work, isn't it? These young people, they come with expectations of what they think the industry is themselves, not just what we think the industry is, but what they think the industry is. And some of those expectations come from, media that they see, as well as other teaching and learning experiences that they've had, but also the stuff that they listen to, and previous conversations about what do we hear on a cast album versus what is the reality of what's actually happening, that thing. And often the students come in to the work with the thought of, I love this song, I want to perform this song, I love this character, I want to perform this character the same way that Jeremy Jordan performed this character or sang this character. But they often look at it as, that's how it has to be. That's what must be. And that's as you, as I know, that's not the truth. And again, that's not working with their structures. And so start working with the students in a way that allows them to recognize that there are other choices to be made. But the challenge is getting them to believe that that's the truth. Oftentimes what we see is with very good singers that do have lots of experience, that they come to material like that and they think, yes, Ben Platt sang Waving Through a Window just like that. I'm going to sing it just like that. And perhaps maybe they're pressurizing, or perhaps maybe it's becoming muscular. And so we start to work in a way to reduce those challenges. And oftentimes their response will be, well, it's not big enough, it's not strong enough, therefore equals not good enough. And you think, okay, but what are you basing that on? And I think oftentimes it's what they perceive, as in what they've heard, what they perceive of what they hear in themselves, but also biofeedback. The idea of what is it that I physically feel when I am singing. I felt my body vibrate when I hit that really great note, so therefore it must be good. Or I felt a higher workload when I hit that note, which made me feel solid and secure, so that must be good. Yeah. And then when you start removing some of that workload and inviting their own experience in, they often go, well, it's not enough. I'm just worried it sounds too weak. And you have to spend about a bunch of time going, let's dig this apart, let's pull this apart, and let's examine that. Do you know what's been really beneficial? Blathering on a little bit, but what's been beneficial and something I really enjoy about my position is that we have our one-to-one singing, we have anatomy in the beginning of their training, we have all kinds of wonderful things. But my favorite course to teach, or favorite lesson to teach, is what we call small group singing. And this is, 4 students in a 1-hour session. And the brief is nothing more than, bring me the things that you're working on, bring me your challenges, bring me the things that you'd like another opinion on, another voice, so to speak, on. And in those sessions, their peers are there, the other 3 students are there listening, and the feedback that those students are able to give to the student that's doing the work, the student that's presenting, is completely invaluable in that they confirm when I say, I think that's probably enough. I don't think you have to worry about that being not big enough, not good enough. Look at the response from these guys, and great. It's a great resource. It's a great tool. But I think the big challenge is allowing the students to connect with their own voice in a way where they learn to trust that the sensations that they feel are enough, that it's not about trying to create someone else's work. It's yours, and it's going to feel the way it feels for you, if that makes sense.
Good. It's so good. Because what you're talking about is integrating a whole load of things.
Absolutely.
Whole load of things. And also, we've come across this a lot. The idea that it doesn't feel difficult, and therefore I must not be working hard enough.
That I must be giving 150%.
Otherwise, I'm not worth it.
And that ethos is in the industry. It's particularly in the dance training, and all of that. And even quite seasoned professional performers that I work with will talk about this. So I'm not giving everything to that note, and I'm saying, please don't give me everything to that note.
Please don't.
Please don't.
Yeah. But it's not efficient, is
No.
it? Do you know, I've got two things to say about that. One, it really sort of bugs me a little bit when I hear people talk about, all right, everyone, give your best 110% tonight, or and I think, yeah, but do you know what? That's impossible. You only ever have 100% of something, all we've got. And if you're always working at 100%, you're working in an inefficient way. You're always pushing yourself to the maximum. And then you have nowhere to go to if you do need to give a little bit more. The thing that I think about that is a whole massive narrative around what it is to be an actor, that whether we learn this when we're young or whether we feel it perpetuated through our professional careers, and that is, it's a competitive industry. You've been hired above all else, above all other people, so you don't let us down. The thing that we're writing to get past, the whole show must go on and all that kind of stuff, that I think people often feel, actually my favorite one is people have paid for these tickets, we have to give them this. That one gets me too. We have to get past this idea of all of those things, of always pushing ourselves to try to meet those demands, because they're impossible, aren't they? It's
impossible.
And
yes.
do you know what, Kevin, you said something that I think is really important. I've seen quite a lot of my colleagues talk about this, musicians and singers. It's not a competitive sport.
No.
I mean, you may enter a competition, and yes, when you're going for an audition, in a sense, that it is a judged performance, for want of a better word.
We do a whole webinar on judged
yeah.
performances.
Yeah, absolutely.
Musical performance and acting and dance performance, they are not competitive sports. It's a completely
not at all.
different mindset. And it implies that it's you and you alone that is going to be achieving that. And of course, acting isn't about that anyway, is it?
No, not at all. Do you know, oftentimes I think students, and again, this is a general sweeping sort of comment, feel that, yes, I have to be industry ready by the time I leave school. Yeah. Okay, we need to have them to a skill level that can get them into the industry. The biggest part of their education happens after they've finished school, after they've graduated from their 3 or 4 year program, and they're doing it. They're doing the work. They're getting out there and they're meeting people and they're finding their way. And that's when they, to learn things about themselves. And I think that's when they start to go, oh, yes, do you remember that time, Kevin, that you said when I was in third year, that you said, do you know, when you go out into the world and if you don't get cast, if you've done your own work and you feel confident that you've done your own work, if you didn't get cast, it's simply because you just were too tall or too short. They wanted someone with brown hair instead of black hair, and more about it's just a job. It's just a job. It's not the competition, as you say, that people are looking at. It's just what it is. You have no control over that.
There's a very interesting pattern, I think, that people don't recognize or realize is there. And I want to liken it to putting on a musical. When you put on a musical, you have your first read-through. No one knows what they're doing. Not really. And everybody just goes, I'm saying the words, we're finding out what the shape of the show is. Then you have your rehearsals and your blocking, which is basically making sure you're in the right place at the right time on stage. Then you have your first act run-through, and a whole load of other stuff comes up in the first act run-through that you're not expecting. And then you do the same with Act 2, and then you have the Sitzprobe, where the orchestra comes in for the first time. Everything goes out of the window because you have a brand new set of experiences that you have to deal with. Then you go back to piano, and then you do the dress rehearsal, and then you have a whole load of things. Oh no, I've missed one. You have Tech Week.
Tech Week.
Tech Week. I actually have a whole T-shirt about Tech Week. So everything can go wrong on Tech Week because suddenly you've got the set, you've got the props, you've got sound, you've got lighting, you've got all sorts of things going on.
And you have to do things over and over again. And of course, this is a time, and I know you'll be reminding your singers about this, it's just a time when you say, okay, I'll do it once or twice at the volume level that I am going to deliver for you. And for the next 10 times you need me to do it, I shall be marking.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
So important to take charge of that moment, is it not?
Absolutely, and it is taking ownership of that moment, and that's where we talk about the agency of ownership of yourselves. I think here's a cold way of saying it as actors: we're the marketable commodity. You're your own business.
Yeah.
Whether we call you freelance, you're your own artist. You are the thing that you market every time you go into an audition, and that's your instrument and your body and all the skills that you have, and you have to nurture that and you take care of that. And I think in particular when we're talking about students, there is that sort of gray area where they feel, I always have to deliver, I always have to sing it full out, I always have to do it because that's what they want of me. Yeah, absolutely. We need to remind them that no, that's not the case. You don't need to give your life for this, everyone. You don't. You don't need to. You don't. Nothing is worth sacrificing.
I have two thoughts about that. I have two different thoughts about that. But before we go there, just let me finish the simile.
Yes.
So you get to opening night, and the new thing you have to deal with is the audience, who bring their own energy.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get into the run, and then by the time you're in week 20 of the run, you're in a completely different performance. It's a whole learning experience. I think exactly the same happens in education when somebody auditions for a college. They will have had a lot of experience, hopefully, being on stage in some way or other, but auditioning for a college is a very different ballgame. And also the things that a college is looking for are not necessarily the things that an agent would be looking for. Because again, the job description's different. So they get through with their college and they do the final performances, and then they go out into the world and they do their first job. And it's like the world has started again.
Oh, I've had so many people tell me that.
Absolutely fascinating. And for me, it's the same thing. Every time you go up a stage in this industry, so you get your first job and it's an ensemble job. That has a different feel. You get an ensemble job with a lead cover. That has a different feel. You become a swing. That's an entire field of its own. You do your first lead, and each time you have a whole new load of experiences that you need to go through. And it feels really different. I think the whole thing is about you develop, not just as an actor or a singer, but as a performer, all of these stages of development, and people don't recognize that you are not the same person by the end of that sequence that you were at the beginning.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And do you know what we're sort of is perspective, aren't we? In that we are sitting on these microphones and we have this perspective. We've been through these things ourselves, but students haven't been through that just yet. And in a way, this sounds a bit harsh, but sometimes you need to let people scrape their knees to lessen, you know. And oh gosh, that was terrible. Why did I say that?
Because it's true.
Because it's true, exactly. And we need to let the students go through those phases to experience those things, to go, oh, I see. I get it. I have to have my own experience of that so I can gain my own perspective. And we do have to let them have that. Although we would also not be doing them a service if we didn't give them the heads up that that's the case. You know, the beautiful thing about learning and teaching, but then also moving into applying it into a career, into a profession, is that what we do is so ephemeral, isn't it? Ephemeral as in it's always different, it's always changing. And I like the idea of we can only be as good as we can be in the moment that we're in. Which is different than the moment before and the moment yet to come. And I think as teachers, if we can convey that to our students, whether that's in the practice room, in the lesson room, in a rehearsal hall, or engaging with agents or moving into the rehearsal process, that if we can convey that to them, maybe if they take that on board, they might give themselves a little permission to grow and shift. And I don't want to say to fail, but that also really might be part of it as well, where they're going, okay, I don't need to be so hard on myself.
Absolutely.
I want to just throw a random idea into the pot, and I don't know what you think about this. It might be something that's already happening within the educational spaces. But just thinking about this part of the conversation, when we're talking about you do your 3 or 4 year training, however long it is, and that prepares you to go into the profession. Then, of course, the whole business of being in the profession is very different. How many places, and maybe GSA is doing it already, how many places actually offer some kind of alumni program or meetings where people, you know, groups of grads get together and just brainstorm how they've been managing?
Yeah, I have to say, rather embarrassingly, we don't have a specific program, although we've been very clear with the students that just because you've graduated doesn't mean it's that you're not part of the family. Don't grace our door ever again. I carry it as a bit of a badge of honor. I think all of the teaching staff do when students that have graduated reach out to us and ask for guidance and information and help or coachings and lessons and all that kind of stuff. Most of the time, sort of groupings are student-led or graduate-led. Of course, they rely a lot on social media, Instagram and whatnot, to organize those things. There's been a number of different events that graduates have produced themselves as a way to network and all that kind of stuff. I'm ashamed to say we don't have a specific organization or system for that, other than please stay in contact with us, stay connected. Have a track record of hiring graduates to take on teaching positions years after they've graduated, and you know, we welcome that sort of thread in the fabric of our family. You know, I think that's exciting when that happens. But you know, what you're inside your question, you're also asking about what support networks are there for actors.
Absolutely.
And I think we're seeing more. Claire was talking about her secret singing, which I think is a really brilliant idea, a space where we are allowed to be a little bit more vulnerable, perhaps once we've established our place within an industry or a level in a career. It's great to have those kinds of things. There are more and more of those sorts of opportunities showing up. And I think, back to what you were saying before, Gillyanne, about not a competition, I think it's easy for us as actors to feel like, gosh, all my peers are being seen for things, gosh, all my peers are being cast, and maybe I'm not. And those are the people that we don't want to leave behind. We don't want them to, you know, they have all the potential. It's just the moment hasn't been right. So having these sort of connection, I think, is hugely beneficial. The challenge is most of the time they have to lead them themselves.
Can we talk about moments in the woods? Moments are really...
I have no idea what's coming out here.
But it's...
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
It's really fascinating because it's such a great phrase and it's also such a great description. That because when you were talking about that, I was thinking there are some people who haven't grown into their casting yet, literally physically have not grown into the casting yet. They're going to be cast enormously well in their late 30s or in their 40s. And so it's about finding ways of making it work up until that point. But I think that you said the moment hasn't happened yet, and I love that, because immediately I thought, then you need to create every moment that you can so that other people see you doing what you do. And I'm a big exponent of, if something isn't happening for you, make it happen somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree, and I think that's about being proactive, isn't it? That's you, again, taking ownership of yourself and your work and running your business. I think where people struggle is, again, watching their peers move into phases of their career, and I'm not, perhaps, or that sort of thing, but also sort of like, gosh, I'm getting really tired of making my own work. One day I just want someone to say, Kevin, you've been hired. Just do it. But from our side of things, I think of lots of graduates that I think, just hang in there a little bit longer. Don't lose faith. Keep your skills going. Keep finding ways to put yourself out there, to be seen, to be heard. Get your voice out there. But don't lose faith. Stay just a little bit longer. And, you're absolutely right. There's lots of people that don't find their moment, their footing in the world until they're in their 30s. Or
there's something I want to comment on that, because I think this generation of students have opportunities through the internet that people, certainly in my generation and the two generations that come after me, never had. So you were constantly doing your own thing and trying to get in front of people. And just as an example, I did a masterclass in one of the other colleges, and there was one particular girl there, and I thought, you're not quite casting in the right place yet because of the look and the energy and all of that stuff. And then I went online and I watched her do a performance of Mrs. Lovett on video, and it was brilliant. And I just thought, if you can do that, which is you showing you and what you do and how funny you are and how skilled you are, I may not cast you as Mrs. Lovett, but I can see exactly what you can do, and therefore I've got other jobs that I could put you in that I hadn't seen with what you'd shown me before. So I'm all for get out onto the internet and just put stuff out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually the internet is part of our industry now, isn't it? Look at what it is that we have to teach at drama schools. We talk about transferable skills, but actually there's so many other things that we do have to be teaching now, and this sort of trucks into what is our job at a drama school and time and all that stuff. But you're right, this generation now needs to be social media savvy. They have to know how to film themselves. They have to know how to represent themselves in a media sense to help support their careers. And if it's done right, goodness, it can be so beneficial. But now it's a tool that we have to be teaching these students because it's kind of an expectation of our world now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like different than it used to be. When we were doing this, I need good headshots. Now I need a great reel, and I need video footage of me doing it. It all has to go on my Spotlight page, and then I have to have a whole pile of followers on my social media as well. Oh my gosh.
And all of that. Do you know, Kevin, this brings us very nicely to something I wanted to ask you, which is, as head of a department, what skills do you require from your teachers?
Okay, well, we're sort of getting into ethos territory, I think, if you don't
Not
mind.
at all.
Remember earlier I said I don't feel that teaching at a drama school is a one-size-fits-all event. And again, we've also talked about individuality. I think when we are really looking at the individuality of students, not only are we looking at how they work and who they are, but we're also looking at how they learn. And in terms of a teaching ethos, I want to provide our students with the tools that they require to make an entrance into the profession, right? Just to make an entrance. And those tools connect to a good understanding of their instrument, which includes their body, and a working knowledge of how their body needs to work in a safe, economical, and efficient way, right? I don't want to be creating actors that have the longevity of 5 years to work. I want them to work for decades. I want them to have that. And I strongly feel that it's our responsibility in embracing the individual, when we start looking at their learning needs, to look at how it is that they learn and how they need to learn or how they even want to learn. And this comes down to language, and this comes down to pedagogy and method and the exercises that we use. What might work for 21 of my 20 student cohort might not work for the 22nd student. I can't leave them out in the rain. That's not the contract. That's not my job. In terms of then looking at how we do that, I want to have a teaching staff that are what I refer to as multi-lingual, and that's that they are experienced in a wide range of methods and pedagogies and language and information, so that, one, I can match students to teachers where we feel there's a connection, a personality connection, but there's also a language connection. But then so that I can also perhaps maybe move students to places where the student gets to experience language they've never heard before.
Yes.
And very often when that happens, those students go, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. When we're looking at the teaching staff, I want them to have the ability to do that, so that if we're with students with a particular teacher, and the student's going, I'm not sure if I quite click with the terms CT and TA, that we look at it and say, okay, well, let's change the language. Oh, actually, I really identify with M1 and M2. I think we need to be flexible to be able to do that. In addition to that, then, it also not only gives them, allows the student to build a toolbox of language and tools that is bespoke to them. And again, we're back to working with their own structures, and that this then puts them in a position that when they go off into their careers, they maybe have a bit more ability to self-manage, but then also speak different languages with different practitioners.
Totally.
Back to that session I was saying about group singing. What's really great is I get, as the years go on, I get to know the students well. I know the teachers really well, that I can say, hey, Gillyanne, are you studying with Fran? And you say, yes, and I know the language that Fran uses. And then I can work in that way with that student. Or the student might say, I've been working with Fran, I really get what she's saying, it's really fabulous, but do you have another way of approaching it? And I might try a different pedagogical approach, a different linguistic set. And sometimes, or often, the student might go, oh, that clicked, or I do get that. And then they go back to their lesson with their teacher and they compare, and then they work together. I think there's the potential danger for it to become that person said and that person said, but what I really love about my team is that we're very collaborative, we're very collegial, we have conversations, we talk about things, we compare notes, we're invited into each other's experiences, rooms, all of that kind of stuff, that it's not about Jeremy is right and Gillyanne is wrong.
Well,
it's, here's two different approaches, what do you think works for you?
Yeah, I love, because I've certainly been in situations, and teachers working in other colleges have been in situations where it becomes divisive, because in a sense, if we are as teachers in competition with each other in some way, my method is better than your method, then we're not holding the space for the students, and it's completely natural for the student in that situation to become divisive themselves. Oh, so-and-so said this. And then, of course, that gets back to the teacher. Again. And if we don't have that collaborative spirit, the sharing, if you like, the buddy teaching, sitting in on each other's lessons, it needs to be done in a very open way. We're not going to create that ethos with the students. Plus, then we're getting into what I think is one of the most toxic aspects of the master-apprentice model, which is we, teachers, are separated from each other. We think it's just about the students. It's not. It's about us as well.
No, absolutely. And you're right. We do need to be careful of how we behave in that respect, because it becomes a top-down model, and then the students, as you say, will model that as well. No, I completely agree. And I think, oh my gosh, how lucky are we that we live in this time of such great information, where as practitioners ourselves, but also as performers, we get to choose what we do. We get to choose the words of this person, the words of that person. How does that resonate with me? I kind of think it's foolish of us to not embrace the fact that we have options, that we do have the ability to choose. And then second to that, it would be foolish of us to not be collaborative in that event. I remember this past summer when we were at the MTEA conference, the Music Theatre Educators Alliance. You led a really great session, the both of you, with breakout sessions where we asked a lot of questions. And I was really, really struck positively by how all of the conversations, how all of the answers to the various different questions somehow connected to this idea of collaboration, of sharing ideas, of opening our doors to each other, which allows us to open the doors to the students and invite them into the work as opposed to putting it on them. And I kind of loved that seems anyway to be a direction that we're all moving in, and I want to applaud that because I think it's healthy. I think it's a really great way of learning, and again, back to this idea of providing agency for our actors moving on in the world. I think this is it. This is how they will do that. You know?
There's another interesting byproduct.
Those focus groups were so powerful, weren't they?
Great.
Oh, weren't
amazing.
they great? They were so great. They were wonderful.
Lovely
yeah.
time to do that. There's something that's an interesting byproduct for the students when you have, if almost like cross-cultural teaching, which is when you go out into the profession, you are going to have a lot of people on the staff of a musical, of a job, giving their opinions about what you do, and they are all going to be using different language. The question really is, how do you translate that language when somebody says, to the point where you go, somebody says, I want that more purple, and your immediate answer could be, do you want plum or fuchsia? It's like, how do you translate what some people are saying? And this is something I mentioned, I think it was with Claire, which is when a young graduate goes out into a job, they take everybody's word with the same weight.
And they're trying to do
everything. And get completely tied in knots. It's a really interesting one. It's one of the really interesting skills is, can you translate what somebody has said into something that makes sense for you?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's going to show up in acting, and it's also going to show up in dance as well. I think it's pretty common. I love that you said I would like that more purple, because hello, that's exactly what happens, isn't it? But you know what? I think I'm going to be doing that now. But you know, we do see it either. Students are in third year. At a lot of the schools in third year, the students are often permitted to start auditioning for things and with agents and all that sort of stuff. And I think there is it's often examples where the students have gone to an audition and then maybe a recall, and they've had a moment with the music direction team or the associate director or whoever's been in there, and they're being given this information and they're told, next time you come back, we'd love to see you again, but could you make it more purple? And then they come back to the studios and have a conversation. They go, I have no idea what that means. And so we start to break it down. But at that moment you go, but this is a really great example of, this is a world that's not prescriptive.
Yes.
I don't know how that director is going to work. I don't know how that music director is going to work. I don't know how that vocal coach is going to work. But you do need to be prepared for that sort of, shall we say, ambiguity. One of the things that I find comes up, and this is no shame, no shade, none of that business, but sometimes language that has multiple definitions. Let's use the one that shows up quite often is speech or speechy. Can you make that more speechy? What does that mean? You want it more rhythmically spoken on pitch? Do you want that to be a thicker vocal fold setup? What is it that you really mean? And I think there's often times where we have moments of confusion of that. And if we're not given the ability or the time to ask, could you define that? Then it's left to us to have to interpret that and make a commitment to what we think that interpretation is, bring it in, and hopefully they'll say, actually what we meant was, or thank you, but no thank you. It is tricky. And again, back to that idea of there's so much learning that happens for these actors early in their careers after they've graduated. This is the kind of stuff that I think is on that list of what do they really learn is, I know when I audition for Pippa Alien's casting team that what they want is, or what they mean by such and such is this and not this other thing. They learn those things as they go,
It's really interesting. Thank you for that.
It is clear we have so much to talk about, but we're running out of time. So will you come back and do another episode with us?
Absolutely, my pleasure, yes.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll see you next time.
Till then.
Bye.
This is A Voice, a podcast with Dr. Gillyanne Kays and Jeremy Fisher.